can you think of possible trajectories how this FTX SBF saga ends? And which one do you hope for? Do you hope that SBF goes to jail? That's the individual. And in terms of the investors and the customers, what do you hope happens? And what do you think are the possible things that can happen?
So, yeah, I definitely think SBF should go to jail. For nothing else, for a semblance of justice, the facsimile of justice to occur for all the investors. I also think there are people probably several steps down the chain that probably knew, at least Caroline Ellison. You can have questions about sort of their, Dan Friedberg, who I'd love to talk about as well. There were a lot of people in that room who I think knew. I think we do so much of like the one guy is all to blame. Let's throw everything at him, when clearly this was a company-wide issue. So everyone who knew, I think, should face the same punishment, which I think should be jail for all of those people.
In part to send a signal to anybody that tries this kind of stuff in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the big things that you saw, like, okay, take a microcosm of all of this action and just look at like the influencer space, right? There's a ton of deals that were done that I've covered ad nauseum about influencer finds out they can make a lot of money selling a crypto coin. The first thing they wonder is, am I going to get caught? If I do this, is there a consequence? And if the answer is no, then it's a pretty easy decision as long as you don't like have any moral scruples about it, which apparently none of them did, or a lot of them didn't, I should say. So as soon as somebody steps in and regulates, that math changes. And all of a sudden there's a self-interest reason to not go do the bad thing. So for example, and I can give a concrete example of this. There was a NFT, the first ever NFT sort of like official indictment, or the DOJ released this press release that they're charging these guys who ran a NFT project that they didn't follow through on their promises. They made all these promises, lied, and then ran away with the money. First ever consequence for anyone in the NFT space. That day that press release came out, I saw several NFT projects come back to life from the dead. Why? Because all those founders are freaking out. And they realized we scammed people. We have to go at least make it look like we're doing the right thing, right? Even just so that's on the optics side. But there's also tons of people who now go, oh, basically law enforcement is on the scene. We can't do the same thing. So there is a very pragmatic reason for this punishment. It's very much just because people work it into their math of, should I commit fraud? And the last several years have been very sort of, it's been like a little bit of a nihilistic landscape where no one was getting punished. Mm-hmm. And so there's this question of, you're almost an idiot if you didn't take the deals. So I think it's really important, extremely important, for kind of law enforcement to play a role, regulation to play a role to make it harder to commit those crimes. And if you commit those crimes, there's actual real world punishment for it. To your point about like what's going to happen to the investors, I think that was kind of your question. It's tough because if the money's not there, the money's not there. I mean, there's going to be they got the best in class guy. It's the guy who ran the dissolving of Enron. So, I mean, I can't imagine someone better equipped to run a complicated corporate fraud like dissolution. But yeah, it's tough because everyone's going to get probably, I don't know, 10 cents on the dollar, maybe less.
I wonder if there's a way to do a progressive redistribution of funds. So I'm just really worried about the pain that small investors feel.
I think there's a lot of thought around that. I forget if they actually do this. I mean, I know there's a lot of law about like you can't treat creditors differently. You have to treat them all the same. Mm-hmm. So I think it'll be some kind of proportional payback. It's certainly not going to be that the guys at the top get, a significant amount of their money back and the rest get nothing. Unfortunately, I think there's such a small amount of assets that back this whole thing in the end. And that value is actually declining every day because it was inextricably tied to SBF. It was like the FTT tokens, which now what are those worth? The Serum tokens, that was his project or the project they made. What is that worth? Basically nothing. So, it's a hard situation. And, there's a bigger ethical concern, which is FTX US It's unclear how backed it was, but it was clearly more backed than FTX International. Do you take all that money and throw it into a big pot and give people money back? Or do you give the US people back their amount of money, which is probably going to be significantly more, and leave everyone internationally out in the cold? And to add to that ethical issue, let's say you're a liquidator and you're US based. There's a tremendous question, like legal questions about, how do you ethically do that? It's not clear. There's a tremendous incentive to just favor the US people over everyone else because it's our country, America, whatever. But I don't know if that's necessarily fair. It's really hard. It's impossible.
And I forget where you said this, but one of the, it probably permeates a lot of the investigations you do, which is this idea that it's really sad that the middle class in most situations like this get fucked over. So the IRS go after the middle class, then go after the rich. It's basically everyone who doesn't have a lot of leverage in terms of lawyers, money, get fucked over.
Yes. And then they're the ones, like it's always the rich and powerful who get the favorable treatment. As a microcosm of this funny story. So one of the big criticisms of crypto, and I think rightly so, is the irreversibility of the transaction. So if I accidentally send a transaction somewhere, it's gone, right?
Yeah.
So crypto.com accidentally sent a lady $10 million. And now they want the money back and they're suing her. But the funny thing is if you are on crypto.com and you send, let's say I accidentally send you money and I come knocking on your door, Lex, I didn't mean to send you, $1,000. I need my money back. Or if I go to crypto.com and I said, hey, I sent that to the wrong person. Can you reverse it? They'll say, screw off. No way. If I go to court, they'll kill me in court because they're going to go, look, this is how the blockchain works. But then they do it. They do the exact same thing. They send this lady $10 million. They're suing her and they're going to win. Now what's in court is not whether they get the money back. It's should she be liable for theft, I believe. So, and that's just another case of the same rules apply differently to different people, whether you have the money to back you or not. It's a very sad thing. And that's why I think people you need journalists fighting for the little person. We really need it. And it's kind of like this unfortunate thing where that's the most risky thing to do, legally. You should not be doing that. But I think it's important to do.
It's the ethical thing. It's the right thing to do.